Hello and welcome to Microsoft Visual Studio 2017. In this video I'm going to show you how to create a very simple project using the software, and I'm going to familiarize you with some of the common user interface items like the Solution Explorer and the toolbox. So to create a project, you go to File, New, and click Project. So right now I only have C# installed as a programming language. If you want to use another language like Python or C++, then go to the Open Visual Studio Installer icon right here, click it, and just install a package that's for your particular language you want to use. So in this video we're going to be creating a Windows Form app. So to do that, click on C# up here. You can click on this Windows Desktop as well if you like, but I just do Visual C#. You select Windows Format from the selection. You will want to select the most recent framework, so in this case it's 4.6.1. Let's name our application. I'll say it's My App. And you want to select which folder you want to store your project in. I'm going to put it in a projects folder on my C drive. These two checkboxes don't need to be selected. I never select them myself. And at this point, click OK, and you will have the new project created. So this is the basic interface right here. This form is what's going to be displayed when the program actually gets run. So the first matter of business is putting items into the form to actually make it do something. To do this, all you have to do is go over here to Toolbox, and if it's not over here, you can access it from the View menu up here. But go to your Toolbox, right here, and if you can see, the Toolbox has cut off some of this Windows form, so go ahead and click this little pin icon up here to fix that, so you can see the entire form now. This is basically a listing of all the different items you can put onto your form. So, for example, all these items. Ta-da! So what we're going to do here is we're going to do a really quick Hello World project. So let's go and we're going to left click, hold it, and drag it over here, create a button. And we're going to create a label. And we're going to create a text box. So a button is used to actually do something. So for example, if you want to submit information or perform a calculation, you'll want to use a button. A text box is used to input information into your program. And a label is used to output information or display information about a text box or something like that. So what I'm going to do here is set this up, and I'm actually going to make two different types of labels. We're going to say our second label. This first label is going to be used to describe or define or title our project. So in order to do that, what you have to do down here is go to something called the Properties pane. The Properties pane is basically a window that describes any object in this form. So if I click on this button right here, then the Properties pane updates, and many different properties or attributes or adjectives about that button will be displayed here. So for example, you can change the text of the button. So in this case it says button 1, which matches button 1 over here. Let's change and let's say hello, click enter, and it updates the text in the button. So pretty much any characteristic or any quality of this button can be modified or updated or changed by modifying the properties in this pane right here. And sometimes it's easier to switch it so that instead of doing it by category, you do it by alphabetical order. But anyway, that's my preference personally. So what we have here now is we have a label 1 and a label 2. We're going to say label 1 is going to be just a display label saying what this project is. So I'm just going to call it my project. And let's go ahead and update the font size because it's the title. So font property. And let's update it to, I think 18 is good enough. And let's make it bold too. Alright. It's not completely centered. I think that's good enough. This second label here is going to be used to output some result. So what we're going to do is we don't want the label to show up as saying label 2 because if you start the program, like so, it just says label 2, and that doesn't make sense why that would be there. So in order to make a label more effectively output information, it's usually better to change 2 properties. Well, technically 3. The first property we want to change is delete the default value, so delete the text property of label, like so. And now you see it's blank. Label's still there, but it's blank. So to fix that, you need to go to auto size, change that to false, and then to make it nice looking, I would give it a border style, and I like to use fixed 3D. So now the label looks like that. It looks kind of like a gray shade in text box, but it's actually a label. So what we want to do is we want to take information we typed into our text box, and we want to output it as a message. And we want that to happen when we click the hello button. So we need to give the hello button some kind of action to do. So to do that, we need to do something called initialize it. And you can initialize the button by double clicking on it, double left clicking. Before I do that though, I want to give my button a unique name. That's different than this hello thing right here, the text property. All the text property does is it says what the button says when you look at it. But you actually need to give the button itself a unique name. Now these buttons, they come with default names usually. This name is button 1, but I'm going to call it BTN Hello, just to give it something unique. And I'm going to click enter. And then once I've given the button a unique name, I'm going to initialize it, again by double clicking on it, so double click. And it'll take me immediately to the code for the button. So it creates this button method. This is called an event method. And it creates it in a code editor like so. Now, if you want to get to this code editor by just other means, like for example, if the code editor, which by the way, this is the designer right here, and this is the code editor. If the code editor goes away if you exit out, then you can get back to the code editor by going to View and click on Code. And we're back here. So anything that goes in between these 2 brackets will be executed as soon as the hello button is clicked. So what we want to do is we want to take the text that's currently entered in this text box and output that into this label right here. So let's do that. So first of all, we need to know the names of these 2 objects, the text box name and the label name. We know the name of the hello button is BTN Hello. So let's give the text box a name. Let's just call it TXT Hello. And we'll call the label, we'll say it's LBL Hello. And so when we write code over here, we can refer to those objects as TXT Hello or LBL Hello. So the first thing we want to do is we want to return the value that's stored in our text box. So we're just going to say string. String is a type of data. So a string is like any combination of numbers or letters or symbols or whatever. So we'll say string, and we'll call the variable hello string. And this is going to be equal to whatever we have stored in our text box. So what's the name of our text box? It's TXT Hello. And this is going to give us an error. And the reason why is because we don't need, this references the actual text box object, but what we want to reference is actually the text stored in the text box object. So remember, when we clicked, or when we created this hello button, the text displayed in the button hello is equal to whatever our text property is. So what that means is any text that's showing in the object is going to be our text property. So in order to get the text that's stored in the text box, then we need to reference the text property. So going back to here, to reference a property of an object, you do period, and then you do the name of the property, text in this case. And by the way, the capitalization is required. If I did a lowercase text, it would give me an error. See? Text is an error. So capitalize. And so what we do right here is whatever is stored in our text box, whatever string, whatever letters or numbers we type into the text box, then whenever we click the hello button, that text is going to be stored in a variable called hello string. And we could name this whatever. We don't need to call it hello string. We could call it my string. We could call it a string, whatever we want to call it. But I'm going to call it hello string. The last thing we need to do is we need to put this text, this string, we need to output it into the text property of this label. So if you remember, that label is called LBL, hello, and we're going to update its text property, and that text property is going to equal hello string. And there we go. And if you wanted to, just to make the code a bit more compact, you could actually rewrite this to make it a little bit simpler. You could delete that and take this and replace that, and this would actually do the exact same thing. The only reason why I created and used the text or the hello string variable is just to make it easier to understand, but you could do it either one of those ways. It'll give you the same result. So let's go ahead and test our program. Alright, so let's say hello world, and it outputs like so. Ta-da! So that's a very simple project. This is usually the first project that most people create when programming, is the Hello World project. So hopefully at this point you have a general idea of how to use the properties pane. Again, all of these properties in this pane are corresponding to whatever object you're clicking on right now. So you can click on this label, this text box, this button. You can even, and this is kind of weird, but you can even click on the form itself. Like, not the labels, not the text boxes, but the actual form, this entire rectangle up here. You can click anywhere in the form that doesn't have a button, that doesn't have a text box or label, and you can actually see, oh, these are the properties for that form. And as you can see, the name or the text property of the form is form1 down here. And hopefully you can see up here that up here it says form1. So let's update the text property of the form. So instead of form1, we'll do hello world form. Click enter, and updates the text property up here for the form. Okay, so we've gone over most of the important topics I want to cover. We've talked about how to create basic form objects, how to use and open the toolbox. We talked about the properties pane, and one more thing I want to talk about is something called the Solution Explorer. So the Solution Explorer isn't super important right now. It'll become much more important as you develop more advanced programs that use different classes and maybe multiple form objects. But essentially what the Solution Explorer does is it allows you to view all the files that are in your project. So this form1.cs right here, it contains subfolders or subfiles, the designer and the resource form. These go beyond the scope of this video, but just keep in mind that in order for your form to work properly, you need to always include designer and resource file. So going back to here, let's say that your form is closed out, that everything is blank. Oh, and one more thing I almost forgot to mention. When you are saving your project, make sure to save it using this button, this floppy disk. What this does is every single file in your project, whether it's the CS form, the designer, the resource form, or resource file, any file in your entire project that's been updated, they'll all be saved if you click the Save All button right here. So I strongly recommend you do that. If you click the Save button, then only the form or only the code sheet or the form that's currently up, only that one will be saved. So always save it using the Save All button right here. So going back to the Solution Explorer, if your entire Explorer is closed, if you have nothing up, and you want to view your project, then all you have to do is go to your form.cs file and double click on it. And that will bring up your project. So it's really easy. That's how you can access your project if it's not already up. And just a quick reminder, if you want to access the code for the project, go to View and Code. Ta-da! Okay, one more thing I want to go over actually is I want to show you how this project can be viewed in the File Explorer. This is really important actually because if you want to share the project with somebody else, you need to know how to share it with the person. So I brought up my File Explorer over here, and this is our project. It's in our C drive and in our projects folder, and this is our project, My App. You can open your folder, and all of these files, all of these folders, they're all required in order for your project to run. So this one right here, the form1.cs, this is the file that we normally are working in, but if you just send the form1.cs file to somebody, they can see your source code, but they can't actually run your project. So you need to make sure that if you send your project to somebody else, that you include all of these files, every one of them. Also, and this is very important, these different files or the different folders, don't move them around. So for example, don't put the SLN file into the properties folder or the object folder or the bin folder or anything like that. Just rule of thumb, don't move around any of these files into different folders. Leave them where they are. And if you follow that rule, then you should be good. But if you do move them around, then your project's probably going to fail or bug or have some kind of error where the project doesn't recognize the file path. I've encountered this a lot of times with people who've submitted this stuff to me, and it makes it impossible to review their work. So the safest way to share your project with somebody else is to compress all of your files into a zip file. So what you can do with that is you just highlight all your files, right click, and do Send to Compressed Zip Folder. I'm not going to do this way though, because it's actually better to zip the parent file folder. So My App, which contains all of the project folders or project files, it's actually better to zip and save, or to zip the My App parent folder. So I'm going to do that instead. So right click, Send to Compressed Zipped Folder. And I just realized something. I need to exit out of this first. Alright, let's try it again. There we go. And we create a basic zip folder that contains all of the application files. And then you can safely send the zip folder to anyone you want and they can get it. Or they can use it, or they can view it, they can use the application, however they want. And also, if you want to move the program to a different part of your computer, For example, maybe your program is on your floppy disk, or maybe it's on a USB drive, or something else, and you want to move it to your hard drive or to another location. Then the safest way to move your program is to first zip it into a zip folder, move the zip folder to a new location, and then unzip the folder. And to unzip the folder, all you do is right-click, extract all, and run the extract wizard. Now keep in mind, sometimes people don't have the extract all option here. If you don't have extract all, then you should be able to do the equivalent using, I think it's WinZip or Zip7 or something like that. But look for something that's similar to that, and that will let you extract the files. But on my computer, the extract all option is what I use to do it. And also, if you have previously saved your project, and you close it out, and you want to reopen it, well, the best way to do that is by opening your project, and you can actually open your project in one of two ways usually. The safest or the best way to do it is by double-clicking on your SLN file right there. And as we'll see in a moment, always use that. As you can see, it opens it up correctly. Let's give it a minute. And then we can look at our project code, like so. Just double click on the form object, open the file, and there we go. So that's how you open your project if you're, opening a saved project you don't have open right now. And then another way to do this, if for some reason the SLN file is gone or deleted, which I've seen happen a couple of times, you can also open a project by using or double clicking on this file right here. It'll say Visual C# project file. That's the type of file. So double click on it, and it'll open the project for you the same way. And there we go. And I know I keep saying one more thing, but I think this is legitimately the last thing I want to show you, or to at least notify you about. Now, I'm not sure when this happens or why it happens, but sometimes when you create a new Visual Studio project, the SLN folder will not be in here. The SLN folder will actually be out here with the project folder. If that happens, then don't worry about it. That's completely fine. All you need to know is don't move the SLN folder around. So if you create a project and the SLN folder starts out here, then do not put that file into that folder like so. Do not, because that may ruin your project. And likewise, if you create a Visual Studio project and the SLN folder starts inside the project folder like it is here, then do not move it outside of that folder. Just again, don't move any files around at all. Don't move the resource, designer, CS, MyApp, don't move any of these things around, because it can ruin your program. Okay, so that is everything. That's all I want to go over regarding Visual Studio Basics. I know this has been a kind of a long video for an introduction, but I want to be very thorough, and I want to make sure you know how to fully explore your project and use the key interface items like the toolbox, properties pane, and the Solution Explorer. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.